So we'll do it live. Anyway, all right. So welcome to Gunday Brunch, guys. I'm Caleb. That's
I'm
Keith.
Keith.
Keith is not in a bar with ghostly, crappy audio this week. However, Jack has either has COVID or was killed by a goth girl on TikTok.
Could be
Which
could be one way, it could be the other,
I mean, or both. He could have gotten COVID from a TikTok goth girl. So that's always that's always an option. But speaking of TikTok, and this is the rant that I mentioned before I started the stream. So if you don't know how the TikTok algorithm works for our listeners out there, it feeds you content based literally on like the amount of time your eyeballs dwell on other related content, right? And sometimes, and it's usually pretty good. Like it does think I'm a lesbian, so it shows me a lot of like girls who like it shows me a lot of hot girls who say they're lesbians. So, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Like,
yeah,
whatever.
like I mean, I'm not upset.
Yeah.
It's
I,
not
I'm just
accurate, but I am not upset, algorithm. Thank you.
exactly. It's like it's the algorithm, it's close to being correct. But sometimes
It's like when the good old because the Insta algorithm works along similar lines, and
mhm.
occasionally it'll just be like, you know what, this man needs to see all of Billie Eilish.
And you're
And
like,
I'm just like, okay, I'm Billie Eilish scrolling right now. Thank you, Instagram.
thanks, I
I
appreciate that.
I,
I mean, I do like Billie Eilish.
yeah,
So
I do as well. It's just not something like I regularly engage with on Instagram. So when it's Billie Eilish time, I'm like, well, thank you, Instagram. I didn't interact with anything that triggered this, but cool.
the Instagram, as a side note, the Instagram Reels interface is super bananas, right? Because you'll be scrolling your regular Instagram feed, and it'll be like, "We are suggesting these reels for you," and I'll tap on
Uh-huh.
them because it's usually hot girls, and I'll scroll, and then, like the first four will all like be thematically similar, right? And then like
Mm-hmm.
number five will be some off the wall shit where it's like, here's pictures of two cats fighting in a yard, and I'm like,
I get three things. I get owlgram, so I get a lot of owl posting, which has to be off the cats. They've got to be
yeah.
like, these are the winged cats. This man wants to see
How
owls.
is an
So I get a lot
owl?
of owl posting. I get a
Okay.
lot of hot girl repost from TikTok.
Hooray.
Um, and the one that makes the most sense right now is dog because I'm getting a dog on Friday. So
Hooray! Puppies.
puppies.
Have you named it yet?
Yes.
Ah, damn it. I was gonna post this episode early and have the commenters name your dog for you.
No,
Um
it's got a name. It's hilarious. I've made people upset with it, or they either love it or they're very upset with it.
well, now you have to share the name on the show.
All right. So the name of the upcoming puppy is Fenrir, which is a play on Fenrir and the constant ah, you're a hater. We
No,
have a
I'm
hater, ladies
laughing.
and
I
gentlemen.
I love people who have been following me for a long time know that there are a few things I love more than puns,
uh-huh.
and that's solid. I like that. I like a
It's
play on
such a good
words.
fun. I've overwhelmingly people have loved it because I'm like, Fenrir is one of the animals of the apocalypse of Ragnarok, but Fenrir just wants to play and catch a frisbee.
No,
So
I
because he
I
is
yeah, I don't. I'm not hating on that one. One of the things that, and I got this from a movie, and I don't remember the movie, but I always have said if I got a Great Dane, I'd name him Hamlet, and like be very smug at people who don't get the joke, and then people who do get the joke, I'd be like, we can be friends. And if you don't get that joke, post a comment about how you don't get the joke, so I can make fun of you and feel smug. Anyway, all of this social media talk aside, here is my rant. So the TikTok algorithm knows that I either like the military or am in the military, and I also like guns. And so occasionally it will be like, hey, this guy's talking about guns. You should watch this video, but it's a video of some guy who is like, you couldn't fight the army with AR-15s. They've got jets and tanks and da 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 and da da da. And I have this rant for a number of reasons. And I thought about doing a TikTok video about it, but I decided that would be cringe. So instead, I'm going to go on the podcast and rant about it because it's not cringe because that's what podcasts are for. and I have a number of complaints here. First off, these guys all look the same. Like they all look doughy and pale. And I'm not, and like, and I'm not, I don't know, like it looks like
They
some,
haven't touched the grass or vitamin D from the sun in
yeah,
a long
like
time.
go outside, like, and they definitely have never, to the credit, to Jack's experience, they definitely have never gotten into a bar fight. They've certainly never served in the
They've not
military.
gotten punched in the face on purpose. Like they have never been in that fight that intended like, oh, well, let's
Right.
go at it, bro. And one of you are gonna end up down on your face in a parking lot.
So first off, they all look the same. They all look doughy and pale, and that is what it is. I don't want to make fun. I'm not making fun of people's appearances here because I think that's a really gross thing to do. As someone on the internet who people think it's cool to make fun of my appearance, but they all have a very similar look, is what I'm saying, right? They all look the same. They definitely look like they could use some sunshine
They
at the very least.
some sunshine and perhaps some lifting heavy things up and putting them down for,
Yeah.
I don't know, health reasons.
Or going for a walk. I like walking. I walk a lot. Anyway,
Mm.
so there's that, and you immediately know it when you see it. And then they're always, all of them, saying the same shit, which is like American gun owners aren't trained enough to take on the military, and you couldn't actually take on the military with AR-15s privately owned firearms. And then whenever somebody in the comments brings up Afghanistan or Vietnam or any of the successful insurgencies that have been launched against the United States military, they're like, well, those don't count. And I'm like, okay, but why though? And then it's
Why
usually like, well,
why don't the illiterate goat herders who shot at us with middle century Soviet grade weapons to previous middle century Soviet grade weapons, like 1850 to 1950 tech was fighting us in Afghanistan for
yeah.
a lot of it. 1850 guys to 1950, and they didn't progress much beyond that unless they got tech from us through through KIA stealing shit and whatnot like that. So what I never get this argument. I never understand it. Like, oh yeah, you won't be able to take on the U.S. military. It's like bold of you to assume that the U.S. military will be both united, eager to use ordnance on U.S. soil.
Well, and that's the last part of it too, is they're like, the military's got tanks and F-15s. And I'm like, do you not know how the National Guard works? Like, first off, the National Guard has tanks and F-15s and tankers to refuel those F-15s, and and like yeah, I want one of these guys to look me dead in the face and tell me that in the event of some horrifying national schism, that the South Dakota National Guard is going to side with the federal government that's trying to take away people's guns, and not with Governor Kristi Noem, who they all think walks on water. And you know what they have in the South Dakota National Guard? Fucking F-16s. Okay, it's like, and it's just this argument. It comes from such a place of ignorance and I mean, like, ignorance. Like, I also want to be like,
it blows my mind the fact that none of the critical logic train has left the station. They just think, oh, the military obeys without question the orders of the federal government, and then you can point out like rant after rant after rant of middle grade and high grade officers and non-commissioned officers who are very clearly not fans of their bosses. They listen to their bosses right now because what their bosses are ultimately ordering them to do is somewhere between inoffensive to just like annoying and stupid.
Right. Like, I need to explain something to you, to these people. Following orders to do gender neutrality sensitivity training is very, very different from following orders to kick down people's doors in Iowa and take away their AR-15s or whatever it is, whatever fantasy scenario you think that is going to happen. And also, my favorite one, there's this chick, she was like, oh, well, they wouldn't need the line troops, your regular infantrymen and stuff, because they just send in special operations. And I'm like, do you know anyone in special operations? These guys are the most anti-government government employees. Like,
Yeah, these dudes do not like their bosses. They like their teams
Yeah.
and they like the nation as a whole. They like the concept of the nation. They are not fans of their bosses. And if they were told, hey, you're going to be dropping ordnance and going door to door shooting people, on top of that, guys, there aren't that many of them. There
No,
are not a lot of special forces.
despite the fact that what's the joke? There were 1,000 SEALs in Vietnam, and I've met all 50, all 2,500 of them at gun
All
shows.
25,000 of them.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's really not that many people
I have
in
a
special
great SEAL story
operations.
once we're done.
I don't know why I don't know why these bug me so much, and I think it's just because it's two reasons. Reason number one, they interrupt my like dumb scrolling time. Like my TikTok is for fun, right? Like I'm looking at like, there's like dogs and memes about and like funny military memes and girls
Yeah,
because that's
I like mill gun guy scrolling for entertainment. So
yeah.
I want it to be funny or something cool, but
And
usually
then
funny. I want funny.
and then it
Entertain
gets
me.
interrupted by one of these dickheads who's like, "Blah, blah, blah, blah." So I think it irritates me because it interrupts the fun. And the other reason that it irritates me, I think, is to your point, is that it's like their logic train doesn't even get loaded, right? Like it's at the station, but it doesn't get boarded and it doesn't leave because it's just sitting there and it's building up a lot of steam, but the steam doesn't go anywhere. And it doesn't go anywhere because these fucking people are making a lot of assumptions about a group of people that they don't know fuck all about. And
No,
that I think is it. They don't know anyone in the military or who has served in the
or
military.
or they know like one friend who kind of agrees with them, who
Right.
is in no way, shape, or form a basis for the military as a whole.
Right. And that one friend that agrees with him was like a truck driver in Iraq and, got blown up or shot at, and which is
Yeah.
perfectly honorable service. And there's nothing wrong with that. But
No,
like,
but
they're not like in the
they don't
community.
have a great appreciation for the military machine as a whole either. They did their job, they had their part, but they don't understand the overall military environments, the fact that units and separate subdivisions of the military, not even just the branches, but individual units. As you go down, all of these have various different subcultures and they're built out different ways. And a lot of that has to do with leadership and climate within them. And so just making the blatant assumption that like a grand total of 3 million people would at the drop of Joe Biden's ice cream cone would decide like, oh yeah, dropping ordnance on people within the continental United States is okay. Remember when we blew up a terrorist, like confirmed convicted terrorist, but he happened to be a US citizen under Obama?
Yeah, and he was in
remember
Yemen.
all the crap that
there was
started?
Quite a bit of outcry about that, if memory serves me.
That was crazy. And you think we're going to go from that to like, yeah, we'll just blatantly assault the US citizenry with the US Army, even if things get spicy. Look, I tell you what, we have little microcosms of things getting really spicy. And you know what the government does? They kind of back away from the fire and kind of contain it and just chill out. Like ever since the Chaz, the what Capitol Hill autonomous region or autonomous zone that was out there. The government was just like, they'll have their tantrum and then we'll go back in a couple.
Well, and they did that too with the rancher, with those guys who like basically the ranchers up in Wyoming, where they didn't they never did a hit on the compound. They waited until they got them out of the compound and then were able to that's a whole different episode. We're not opening that can of worms, but to my point is they didn't do like a direct hit on the compound. Really, they haven't done any direct strikes on compounds since they killed all those kids in Texas.
Even when the problem is a microcosm, when it's really small and you would actually have the weight of numbers and the leverage to do it, the government doesn't. So now you're proposing that, all right, a significant portion of the entire nation has gone civil war. It's time to shoot at the government. And you're assuming the military is just going to be like, yeah, okay.
And you're right, it is time to shoot at the government. Yeah, anyway, all right, rant over. Those people are all dumb. Please stop posting dumb TikToks that ruin my feed when I'm just trying to look at, girls dancing or whatever it is that I'm looking at.
Stop failing at incredibly contrived logic trains, please.
Right, yeah. All right, so what was your SEAL story? What do you got for me?
It reminded, because there were like 100 something SEALs in Vietnam, and I've met 10,000 of them, or whatever the joke is. I didn't meet a Vietnam SEAL. I met a Teams guy who spent hours upon hours. And this is the most annoying thing about working behind a gun counter, for those of you who have. The vet bro who needs to impress you with their excellence. And it's not just vet bros, but like the guy who needs to assure you that he's the expert. I'm like, you don't.
It's cool.
This is a store. You can just buy things. It's okay. You can just
Ma'am,
ask
this is a
normal
Wendy's.
questions. Yeah, sir, this is a Wendy's.
Oh,
So
Lord.
this guy rolls in, and he doesn't say SEAL. He says he was on the teams. And then he tells me the team that he allegedly trained with, which was the underwater dive team from 1946. And he's not old enough.
Underwater dive team from 1946.
The UDT class that he mentioned went in 1946.
Oh, good times. Good times.
I was like, okay, well, you're looking great for your age, sir. And then he proceeded to tell me about the SIG P226, which is a pistol I love, by the way. I love my 226.
It is a good SIG.
And how from the late 1970s till he got out of the teams in 1984, he shot about 200,000 rounds through his. And then later, his daughter found for him at a gun show his pistol, which had been transferred out of the military and was now for sale at a gun show, because that's how that works.
Yeah, it's funny because both of us are or have been armorers in the military, and
we're DoD armorers, guys.
Definitely
not how that works.
Not how that works at all. That's, oh man, it's like
the greatest, and the piece de la resistance of the whole thing was the fact that he said this occurred in 1984, the year the 226 was invented.
Yeah, I was about to say, wait a minute. 1984.
So
they didn't even.
He'd been shooting a gun that wasn't done yet for 6 years to the tune of 200,000 rounds before it had entered the M9 trials.
That's pretty good. Like, I mean, if you're gonna, if you're gonna make shit up, go big or go home, I guess. I mean,
I'm waiting for one day, just one of these days, for these idiots to catch on that, like, bro, if you tell me you were a water purification specialist or motor T, I'm not challenging that. Like, that's a boring run-of-the-mill job. You could lie your way through it just fine.
Yeah, but no one wants to be.
Don't tell me your underwater dive team was from 1946, and then you got out of the teams 40 years later with a pistol that you'd been shooting for 6 years that wouldn't be invented until the end of your service.
I will say, so far, no one has ever tried that, to my knowledge, no one has ever tried to falsely claim to be Air Force Security Forces, because no one in this career, like, because it's the worst job. No, I love my job most of the time. Some of the time, occasionally. Anyway, that does remind me, though, of a related gun store story. So for people who don't know, when you work in a gun store, you get a lot of people in there who are either, claim to have been military when they weren't, or, whatever. And you also get a lot of people who like to play dress up. And this one sort of falls into the latter category, because technically this kid did go to boot camp. And so here's the story. So one day I am in the store that I was running in South Florida, and this kid walks in wearing a sweatshirt that had one of the Air Force BMT, basic military training squadron logos on it. So at Air Force BMT, once you graduate, you can buy like merch that's got like your squadron logo on it and stuff like that. There's, I don't know, I forget how many squadrons there are. And it's kind of a fun thing. Like parents do it. I had a squadron shirt from my BMT squadron for the longest time that I used to like PT in and stuff. And that's, I don't know where it is anymore. Oh, you know what? That fucking girl took it anyway. That's a different story. I
You,
just remembered where
you and
that shirt
Jack,
is.
you and Jack victimized again.
Oh, victimized again.
Missing
Anyway,
shirts.
so this kid walks in and
I have. Let's not pretend. I have
he's
missing
wearing a
shirts.
hoodie that's got the logo from one of the Air Force BMT squadrons on it. And like that's a super boot thing to do, but it's okay. We've all done super boot things. And he frankly looks like
You
he's 12.
do, yeah, you do super boot things because that's fun for you at the time. I don't begrudge people enjoying that part of their life.
No.
I enjoyed that part of my life.
Being a super boot is actually a really important part of the military process because you can't eventually become a salty, lance corporal or, borderline alcoholic E6 unless you go through the super boot phase. So anyway, super boot comes in and he's wearing this hoodie, and I strike up a conversation with him because I recognize the hoodie, I recognize the squadron, and the point where the wheels fall off of this is when I ask him, oh, well, when did you graduate BMT? And he said, and I have to give him credit because he never, at least to my knowledge, like lied to me. But he was like, oh, I didn't. I got medically discharged after whatever amount of time. And I was like, huh.
And that happens.
And it does happen. And I actually believe that happened. And it was just, I was like, and I didn't say anything to him because I didn't want to be a dick. But in my head, I was like, maybe don't wear the sweatshirt then, because the sweatshirt.
Like you didn't.
Yeah, like you didn't. I mean, you were part of the squadron, but maybe don't wear the sweatshirt.
Yeah.
So,
like, bro, you didn't make it. And I know plenty of people who did have issues, who had medical issues, who were broke or stuff like that, who did in fact push through and made it. And I'm not advocating that as like you should do it, because there are certainly situations where you are too broke to continue. An injury occurred, a situation occurred, you're done. And the military is not going to force you to damage your body further in the pursuance of this job.
I mean,
but they're not great at that. They're not great at making that call.
Yeah. I was like, they will force you in some cases, but
if you that's just one of the, like we had guys at basic training who got med discharged. We had, I think, 3 total who med discharged, and they had gotten pretty severely injured and they got discharged out. But none of them had that attitude like, hey, I still get to wear this sweatshirt, I made it. It's like, no, you didn't.
What was the name of that industry chick that said she was a Marine, and it turns out she didn't? She got far enough in Marine basic training to get her photo taken, but then got processed out for something. Frick. Amy Jane.
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
I remember that one. The moral of the story is, and like, and again, I look back on that incident with that kid, and I'm not even mad at him. Like,
speaking of fake Marines, I had a fun one also at my gun store.
Give me the fake Marine.
The fake Marine. This guy comes in, and he is just a tall, older guy in his 40s at the time. This was 10 years ago. So, he wanders in, and he's just like, he's twitchy. You know the twitchy type that wanders into the store, and you're just like, something's off with you. And he comes up to the counter, and I had just I was at the end of my first contract with the Corps. I had just started talking to our scout sniper guys because I'm a gun nerd and I loved all their tech, and they were looking for guys to go to sniper indoc. I chose no, because that would have extended my contract for at least 2 years, and I was kind of fed up with being in the military at the time. It had been 8 years. I wanted
the hardest of passes.
So I'm like,
you did an 8-year,
2 more years, no fun.
You did an 8-year initial enlistment.
It was a total. It was a 6x2. It's a reserve enlistment.
Oh, okay.
I was a dirty reservist. Let no one say I claim otherwise. I was a dirty reservist. But I did a 6x2. It ended up being more like a 7x1, just based on how the calendar and everything worked out.
It'd
And
be like that
yep.
sometimes.
And so I'm working at the gun store at this time. This guy rolls in. I'd been spending the last 3 or 4 months talking with our sniper guys because they were evaluating people to go to sniper and doc and fill out the teams there. So I was like, ooh, cool. Sniper rifles and scopes. And this dude wanders in all twitchy and he comes up and he's like, I was a Marine Scout sniper. And I'm immediately like, I don't believe you.
Like,
And then
okay.
his buddy rolls in and is like, hi, he was a Marine Scout sniper. And we're going to go teach the county SWAT team how to do sniper stuff. What do you guys recommend? And I'm sitting here like, if
Mm,
if you have done the thing you claim to have done, wouldn't you know?
wouldn't you
Like,
not be asking the guy
what
in the gun
what do you,
store?
yeah, wouldn't you, the mid-20s counter help, what would you recommend? And so I start laying out like, all right, well, this is a county SWAT team, and we're talking county SWAT snipers. So probably a Remington 700 with a box mag and a decent scope on top of it, and we're all good. Like, you don't have to go super elaborate here. Put it in 308 and call it a day. And the twitchy sniper guy's like, oh yeah, that's what I was thinking. And I'm like, I just why are we playing this game, man? Like, you don't have, if you convince the SWAT team that you need to train their snipers, like, good on you, good hoodwink, I guess. Like, congrats. I'm never going to rely on that county for
Yeah.
investigative services ever again. Um, Not swinging well there, but like, you don't you don't need to play this game with me and then fail at the basics of the game, because at this point in time, I'm thinking, well, do you want like a 308 semi-auto with, put together like a poor man's M110 package for these guys, or do you just want like an M24 or an M40 that's all decked out? Speaking Army or Marine Corps as you would.
Wait, they have different
Like,
designations for that?
yeah, the
Oh,
Remington 700s in service are M24 and M40 respectively.
the uh that makes
They're
sense.
they're Remington 700s, guys. They're really nice bolt action run guns.
I really enjoy, one of the things the Air Force does that's smart is that we basically just adopt the Army M designation for any sort of weapon system because we're like, why come up with our own? Just take it from Uncle Army. Um, you know, I have had guns working in a gun store. I think everybody who wants to work professionally in the firearm, it's sort of like I think everybody should be a bartender or a server at
Every,
some point.
everybody should be a food industry server of some sort at some point in time. You should work in that side of customer service industry. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Hotels qualify as well. If you've ever been like a hotel
Yes,
front desk clerk, a frickin' server, or a bartender, that is the absolute
I'll
front lines
I'll throw
of.
a casino on that pile
Ooh,
too, because you
yeah,
can get all
yeah.
you can get all of that good customer service interaction experience right there at Ye Old Casino, and realize just how terrible the general public can be.
So if you want to have a career in the firearms industry, I strongly encourage you to spend, a year sliding guns across a glass counter in a gun store
Mhm.
because you meet your actual customers, like you meet the actual consumers of these products. And I think it's a very informative experience because let me tell you the
It's
number of USPSA shooters that came into my store, not counting me, I don't know, like one or two. Uh, and I do remember this. Oh man, the worst though, and like this makes me want to wash my hands thinking about this. Is when people would pay for stuff with like damp money, and it was South
oh,
Florida. So if like you're sitting on your wallet and you've got like a sweaty butt, and then your wallet is like canvas because you're doing well in life if you have a canvas wallet, send
we
it
we
to
had
me.
a policy that we did not accept titty money.
Yeah, no titty
We did
money.
not accept titty money. We did not like damp money, which nope,
I had this dude.
Run your card.
He bought like, I don't remember what he bought, but I remember it was expensive. Like it wasn't like, a Taurus G2C or the my favorite thing to sell was I would sell high point carbines with those. You remember those Red Ball magazines, the 20 round
Yeah.
single stack mag? The backside of the packaging of that magazine said it was perfect for the active shooter in your life. Like, not like, and they meant like active enthusiast in the
Yeah, like
shooting
active
sport.
as in you are an active person.
Right.
Activia.
Not active. And I just remember I was like, oh, this didn't get proved by like
No.
anybody.
No, nobody looked at that and went like, problem.
So I used to sell high point C9s with that Red Ball magazine and one of those like trigger guard clip-on lasers for the high point C9 as a package deal for like, I don't know, I think it was like $200. And let me tell you, I'm clean up on those. Clean up. But anyway, I remember I had this guy come in and he bought, God, I wish I could remember what he bought, but I remember it because he bought it all in cash with fives, which I thought was weird because who has $500 worth of $5 bills?
I had a guy do that with ones, and I know exactly why, because we had mentioned that like we're very like, hey, well, however you pay, we don't care. And he's like, could I come in with ones? And we're like,
okay,
yeah,
so that guy did it on purpose.
And like he did it for a bit. We knew the guy. It was funny. But yeah, just rolling in with all fives is like, especially no context, no.
Yeah, and fives especially is a weird denomination to have a lot of, right? Like,
yeah, 20s make sense. 20s come out of the ATM when like 20s make sense.
I used to have people pay with like very clearly like went to the ATM, pulled out a stack of cash and handed it to me. Like that was not an uncommon experience. But yeah, I still, I mean, obviously I think about roll of fives guy to this day because it was such a confusing method of payment and they were damp, which was also weird. And like that whole transaction, but I mean, he passed an FDLE check because Florida doesn't have NICS. It has FDLE, which is so much worse. And if you've worked in a gun shop,
we need universal background checks, guys.
Imagine
the words of someone who has never worked with the background check system.
Like everybody who's worked with NICS knows that it can be kind of terrible at times. But imagine a system. It just
decides like no today.
Yeah, imagine a system worse than NICS. And that's the Florida Department of Law Enforcement's background check system. That's not a knock on FDLE as an organization. They actually do some really good work, but that particular system, woof, terrible. Anyway,
the NICS system, like many .gov sites, including a lot of the military sites, it does not work good, guys.
Keith, what is the weirdest purchase that you ever had when you were in the store?
Strangest purchase was probably it's a coincidental one. It's kind of fun. What's the Death Wish gun? I forget it.
Hang on.
The Magnum.
Oh, the AMT Auto Mag?
Yeah. The AMT Auto Mag. We had a guy roll in and goes, hey, I know you're not going to be able to get one of these for me, but I love the movie.
An AMT Auto Mag.
I want an AMT Auto Mag.
It's a 475 Wildly Magnum.
Yep. And we go like, I'm glad your expectations are reasonable, sir, because there's no way in hell we're going to be able to acquire this firearm for you. I would hunt on the auction sites to see where it is at. And 48 hours later, someone rolled in and consigned an auto mag to us. The universe spoke and is like, I am done with this gun and someone else needs it.
And then
so they rolled in, AMT Auto Mag comes into the store, and we call this guy up and we're like, you're not going to believe this.
But guess what just walked through the front door?
Gun.
Dude,
yeah, and he came in and got it. So it wasn't a weird customer. It was just like a weird circumstance that like we were able to provide something that odds said we shouldn't have been able to provide. The second is the Boomerang AK. We had a Wazir 10 AK,
Oh,
Wazir 10-63 AK that we sold, I think, 9 times to 9 different people. And then as we, like, after the fourth time, we're just like, we're quietly waving at it and like, we'll see you in a few
see you
weeks.
soon.
Because it would always come back. Always come back. Either, they needed money, or their girlfriend or their wife got mad at them because they bought a rifle or whatever it happened to be. Or like it was like, well, I had it and then I thought about it and then I don't want to do AK 760 by 39 or whatever. Like the reason always changed, but we had the boomerang AK, and I think we sold that gun 9 times.
That's crazy. I never had any of those. I had a couple where my favorites were always the people who somehow didn't know they had committed felonies. And I'm like, I feel like this is like, and they would come in and they would fill out the 4473 and they would check, all the boxes correctly. And then it would come back denied. And I would say, hey, sir, I'm sorry, I can't transfer this gun to you. Your background check has been denied. And they're like, oh, yeah. I wonder if this is about that 5th DUI that I got. And I was like, yeah. I mean, I'm not a lawyer.
I am not a lawyer, sir, but I would suspect you are on the right track.
Or, the one where it's like, oh yeah, I had that aggravated assault conviction. Yeah. Oh, and I mean, I never had any really wild that. I mean, I had a couple ag assault ones, or stuff like that. Those were always good. But again, I do think, guys, that I'll wrap this episode up on this note. If you are listening to this and you're aspiring for a career in the firearms industry, working in a gun shop is not going to be a lever into that, right? Like, no, major brand is going to be like, oh, you worked in a gun shop, let me hire you. It's because it's to them, it's just customer service experience. But I think if you want to understand, especially if you want to work in like marketing or sales or something like that, or even product development, if you want to understand the vast majority of the people that are actually buying these products, you should work in a gun store and work in like a fairly high volume one. Not like, because we all know this gun store. We know the gun store that you walk into and there's like 2 old guys in the corner and they don't even say hi. Not that gun store. They don't sell that many guns.
Something high traffic, high volume, good customer service style, and learn the customer base. Obviously, we're ranting about some of the craziest or some of the worst customers. You get a lot of good customers too.
Oh, yeah.
I remember a ton of very good customers who were always on top of their stuff. They knew what they wanted, or they would have a very, very intelligent conversation like, hey, what do you think of a Daniel Defense AR? Or, hey, I need a scope. I'm going out west. I want something light because I'm going after, mountain, like sheep hunting, mountain goat or whatever. So they would have very clearly kind of what they needed, and they would be able to have a good discussion about it, or they were just always around the store and just fun to have around.
Yeah. I honestly, I remember I remember so many fun, cool interactions with customers. And especially in Florida, you'd get a lot of people. My favorite interaction I had was you'd get a lot of people who would come in to buy a gun, and they were transplants from the upper East Coast. And they would be like, all right, so, who do I have to like, the biggest one was, okay, now that I have this gun, who do I have to register it with? And I'd be like, no one. You're in America now. And they would be like, what do you mean I don't have to register it? I'm like,
it's freedom.
There's no gun registry in Florida, which is one of my other side. This is a side note, entertainment pet peeve is when like shows will be set in some state where there's no gun registry, like cop shows, and then they'll get a gun in and they'll be like, let's check the registry, and I'm like, the one that doesn't exist.
Oh,
they did that in what was that? Longmire. They did that in Longmire. They had some chick like got pulled over and she had an M&P on her and she was all, yep, it's all registered to me and everything. And I'm like, in Wyoming? Registered with fucking who?
That's when you want for realism the character to go, huh? We don't have that here.
Yeah, we don't have a gun registry in Wyoming, ma'am. So I don't know. I don't know who you told about this gun, but it wasn't us.
Like, yeah, like I
Wouldn't
don't know who
that
you told
be?
because we don't care.
Wouldn't that be? Oh man, that's like hang on, I just thought of a plot for like a mystery novel. So the bad guys are a crew, and they're going around calling people saying they're from the government, and they're establishing a gun registry, and you need to give us your serial numbers and make some models of all your guns. Actually, no, that'd never work. If somebody called me and asked me for that, I'd be like, get the fuck out of my face and hang up.
Right.
So you'd only get the really dumb people. Anyway, guys, that's it for this week's episode. Pray for Jack. He's been murdered by a big titty goth girl. So he died as he lived. See you guys next week.